In 2009, a 27-year-old MIT graduate sat in a studio apartment in Boston. He had a 3.9 GPA. He had read over 200 business books. He had built 14 different business plans, each one more detailed than the last. His spreadsheets were color-coded. His projections were perfect. His strategy was flawless. He had everything a successful entrepreneur needs, except one thing: money. His bank account showed $11. His rent was due in 4 days. And for the first time in his life, Daniel Mercer had no plan left to right. What happened next, and what an old man told him in a coffee shop that afternoon, changed not just his life, but his entire understanding of why intelligence and wealth almost never arrive together. This is that story. Daniel had always been the smartest person in every room he entered. At school, top of his class. At MIT, Dean's List 3 years straight. At every dinner table, the one with the answer. He wasn't arrogant about it. He was just wired differently. His brain never stopped. Ideas came constantly. Connections that other people missed, Daniel saw instantly. So when he decided to start a business at 24, everyone around him said the same thing: if anyone can do it, it's you. 3 years later, Daniel had done a lot of things. He had researched 47 different business models. He had rewritten his business plan 14 times. He had attended 23 networking events. He had taken 6 online courses on entrepreneurship. He had built a detailed 5-year financial projection. What he had not done was launch. There was always one more thing to research, one more risk to calculate, one more variable to understand. Every time he got close, he found a new problem, a new gap, a new reason to wait just a little longer. And now, sitting on the floor of his apartment, back against the wall, laptop open to a blank spreadsheet, he stared at his bank balance. $11.43. His phone buzzed. His landlord. He turned it face down. Daniel Mercer, the smartest person in every room, had never felt more completely lost. He grabbed his jacket and walked out. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he couldn't sit in that apartment one more minute. He ended up in a small coffee shop 3 blocks away, ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, sat down by the window, and stared at the rain. Asterisk. He didn't notice the man at first. The coffee shop was quiet. An older gentleman, late 60s, gray suit, silver hair, was sitting 2 tables away, reading a newspaper. Not on his phone, not on a laptop, just reading. There was something calm about him, unhurried, like a man who had already decided the world could wait. At some point, Daniel realized he was staring. He looked away quickly. The old man folded his newspaper. Mind if I sit here? He asked. Better window view. Daniel gestured to the empty chair across from him. They sat in silence for a while. The rain got heavier. Then the old man said, without looking up from his coffee, "How many plans have you written this week?" Daniel frowned. "Sorry." The old man looked at him then. Calm, direct, not unkind. "You have the look," he said simply. "I've seen it many times. Very smart, very prepared, completely stuck." Daniel stared at him. "I don't know what you're talking about." The old man smiled, just slightly. "How many plans?" he asked again. A long silence. 14, Daniel finally said. The old man nodded slowly, like he had expected exactly that number. "My name is Arthur," he said, and extended his hand. Daniel. Arthur looked out at the rain. "Do you know what the most dangerous thing in business is, Daniel?" "Risk," Daniel offered. "No," Arthur said. He picked up his coffee cup. "Intelligence." Asterisk. Daniel looked at him. "That doesn't make any sense." "It never does. To the smart ones," Arthur said. "That's part of the problem." He set down his cup and looked at Daniel directly. "Let me ask you something. When you were building your business plans, what were you doing?" "Preparing," Daniel said. "Reducing risk. Making sure I understood everything before I..." "Before you what?" Arthur interrupted gently. Daniel stopped. "Before you started?" Arthur said. "Were you ever going to start?" The question landed like something heavy. Daniel opened his mouth, closed it. Arthur leaned back. "There's a psychological phenomenon," he said, "that no one ever talks about honestly. It has a name: analysis paralysis. But that name makes it sound like a small inconvenience, a minor thinking habit. It isn't. It is, for intelligent people especially, the single most reliable path to a lifetime of being broke. But planning is important," Daniel said. "Every business book says." "Every business book," Arthur said, "is written by someone who eventually stopped reading business books and did something." Daniel was quiet. "Here is what happens inside a smart person's brain," Arthur continued, "and I want you to listen carefully, because I am describing you, not insulting you." He folded his hands on the table. "A person of average intelligence sees a business opportunity. They think, this looks interesting. They try it. It fails. They adjust. They try again. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't. But they are in motion. Now, a highly intelligent person sees the same opportunity, and immediately their brain begins to process. What are the risks? What are the competitors doing? What is the market size? What if the economy shifts? What if my assumptions are wrong? What if there's a better version of this idea I haven't thought of yet?" He paused. "You see what happened? They're being thorough," Daniel said, but his voice had less conviction now. "They're being paralyzed," Arthur said quietly, "by their own intelligence. Psychologists call it complexity bias. The smarter the brain, the more it seeks complexity. It actually distrusts simple answers. It finds reasons to keep thinking instead of acting. And every day spent thinking is a day not spent learning what only action can teach you." Daniel stared at the table. "I kept finding problems," he said slowly. "Every time I was about to launch, I'd find something else I hadn't considered." "Of course you did," Arthur said, "because you were looking for them. Smart people are extraordinarily good at finding problems. That's precisely what makes them broke." He let that sit for a moment. "The market does not pay you for understanding it," Arthur said. "The market pays you for serving it. Those are two completely different activities." Daniel felt something shift inside his chest, an uncomfortable uncomfortable, specific feeling, like a mirror being held too close. "So what should I have done?" he asked. Arthur looked at him. "Tell me, of your 14 plans, which one was your first?" "A productivity app," Daniel said, "for students." "And what happened to it?" "I found some problems with the monetization model, and the market was competitive, and I wasn't sure about that." "Stop," Arthur said gently. "When did you decide it had problems?" Daniel thought. "About 3 months in." "Had you built anything yet?" A pause. "No," Daniel admitted. Arthur nodded slowly. "You spent 3 months analyzing a product that didn't exist, for customers you had never spoken to, in a market you had never entered, and you decided it would fail." He tilted his head. "Daniel, how could you possibly know that?" The rain against the window, the quiet sound of the coffee shop. "There's something I learned a long time ago," Arthur said, "and it cost me years to learn it. Years I wish I had back. Ready intelligence and earned knowledge are not the same thing. You, sitting in that apartment, are extraordinarily ready, but you have zero earned knowledge, because earned knowledge only comes from one place." He pointed at the window. "Out there, in the market, in the failure, in the customer telling you no, in the version 1 that breaks, in the pivot you never planned for. Every hour you spend planning in here," he tapped his temple, "is an hour you are not collecting the only education that actually builds wealth. Real intelligence is not knowing everything before you begin. Real intelligence is learning faster than everyone else while you move." Daniel's jaw was tight. "I was afraid," he said quietly. "If I launch and it fails, then I was wrong. And I've never—" He stopped himself. Arthur's voice was gentle. "You've never been wrong," he finished. Daniel said nothing. "That is the real answer," Arthur said. "Not analysis paralysis, not complexity bias. Underneath all of it, for most smart people, is this: their identity is built on being right. And the market doesn't care about being right. The market cares about being useful. The moment you launched, you risked being wrong. And that felt more dangerous than being broke." He sat back. "So you stayed broke and stayed right for 3 years. Asterisk." Daniel walked home in the rain. He didn't bother with his jacket hood. Arthur's words had done something strange to his thinking. Not broken it, rearranged it. He sat back down in his apartment, opened his laptop, looked at the 14 folders, each one named after a business plan. He opened the first one, the productivity app. He didn't read the plan. He opened a new document, completely blank, and wrote one sentence. "What is the simplest version of this that I could build in 2 weeks? Not perfect, not complete, not ready. Simple." He worked through the night, not planning, building. 2 weeks later, Daniel had a basic, functional version of a student productivity tool. It was rough. The design was basic. There were features missing he had always assumed were essential. He sent it to 12 students he knew. 3 of them used it every day for a week. He called one of them. "What do you actually use it for?" he asked. The answer completely surprised him. It was a feature he had almost not included, something he had considered minor. In 3 years of planning, he would never have known that, because that knowledge only existed out there. 6 weeks later, Daniel had 200 users, not from advertising, from word of mouth, because he had built something that solved a real problem, discovered only through real use. He wasn't making life-changing money yet, but for the first time in 3 years, he was moving. He was collecting what Arthur had called earned knowledge, and it was changing his product faster than any plan ever had. For months later, Daniel ran into Arthur at the same coffee shop. 800 users, Daniel said, sitting down across from him. Small revenue, but growing. Arthur looked at him over his coffee cup. "How does it feel?" he asked. Daniel thought about it. "Uncomfortable," he said honestly. "There are things I don't know, things that don't work yet, problems I can't fully solve." Arthur smiled. "Welcome," he said, "to the education that builds wealth." Asterisk. Daniel Mercer never became a billionaire overnight, but 3 years after that rainy afternoon, his productivity platform had over 40,000 active users, a small team, real revenue, and a waiting list for their next feature. Not because he got smarter, but because he finally understood what his intelligence had been doing to him. Arthur's words, the ones that stayed with him, the ones he wrote on a card above his desk, were simple. The market does not pay you for understanding it. It pays you for serving it. Here is what I want you to take from this story. If you are smart, genuinely smart, there is a very specific trap waiting for you. One that will feel like responsibility, like preparation, like wisdom. It is none of those things. It is fear, dressed in the language of intelligence. The world is full of people with perfect plans, flawless spreadsheets, and color-coded strategies, sitting in apartments with $11 in their bank account. And the world is equally full of people who started with something broken, imperfect, and incomplete and built something real. The difference was never intelligence. The difference was motion. So I want to ask you one question, and I want you to sit with it honestly. What is the thing you have been planning instead of starting? Because the version of you that starts today, even imperfectly, will know more in 30 days than the version of you that plans for another year. That is not an opinion. That is the psychology behind every person who built something real. Asterisk. If this story shifted something in the way you see your own thinking, that's exactly what this channel is built to do. Every week, we go deeper into the psychology behind why some people build wealth and why equally talented people never do. Subscribe, because the next story might be the one that changes everything for you.